My name is Mark, a recording angel. I've been observing this earth since the dawn of creation. The Most High has asked me to share my recordings with you. The following are my records of humans during the fascinating times when the desire of ages, Jesus the Messiah, came to this earth. And they're collected in this book, Victory of the Warrior King, the story of the life of Jesus. If today's recording contains situations which might be uncomfortable for younger listeners, I will mark the video with the words parental guidance recommended. Sarah, Bethany. Having overslept, Sarah grabbed her water jug and hurried toward the well. Now she would miss most of her friends, who already would have drawn their water and returned to their homes to start the day's bread baking. Leah was still sitting at the well. "Oh, I'm so glad to see you, Sarah. I was waiting for you. I was about to see if you'd fallen ill." "No, just overslept." "I'm glad you're well, for there's something going around." "Really?" Sarah asked. "I hadn't heard anything about it." "Well, I hear that Lazarus is sick." "Oh, probably some horrible illness that filthy sister of his brought back from Magdala. You hear all kinds of things about that place." "They say he's really ill," Leah continued. "Well, that's what he gets for allowing somebody like that to stay at his house. God must be punishing him for what she's done." A shadow brushed past her, and she spun around. "I thought if I came this late there wouldn't be anyone else here," Mary said in surprise. "Well, there won't be now," Sarah snapped. "We're just leaving." "My brother is very sick," Mary suddenly blurted out. "That's what we heard," Leah said. Sarah's face burned as she wondered how much Mary had overheard. Then she tossed her head and said, "Well, maybe you should get your Yeshua of Nazareth to heal him, the way he supposedly healed you. Sounds like the whole family could use some healing." Mary stared at her for several moments, then said, "Yes, I suppose the whole family does. That's a good idea." Turning on her heel, she disappeared down the narrow street. 2 days later, I followed Sarah to the well. The girl was late again. It seems to me that she didn't oversleep, but went late on purpose, knowing that Mary avoided the other women. Mary was still filling her family jug when Sarah arrived. "So, Mary, how is Lazarus doing today?" The woman turned toward her. "He's getting weaker. I didn't realize you cared about Lazarus." Sarah stared at her feet for a moment as if she could feel the stinging in her conscience, but then she raised her head and said, "It sounds like you really should call your Messiah, this Yeshua, before it's too late." Mary's eyes filled. "I have. And? I have heard nothing yet. Surely he isn't that far away." The woman shook her head. "I don't understand, but I'm sure he'll be here soon." Sarah didn't know what else to say, so she turned her back and studied a palm tree until Mary left the well. I shook my head. These humans, as vulnerable as they all are still so cruel to each other. However, such behavior was nothing new to me. I shook my head and continued to follow my charge. "Sarah," her mother called. "Sarah, where are you?" The girl got up from grinding the wheat and went to her mother. "What's the matter?" "We've just heard that Lazarus died this afternoon. Make some extra bread and let's prepare for a funeral." "Does Mary know?" "Of course." Her mother nodded. A strange expression crossed the daughter's face. "Why are you looking like that?" her mother demanded. "Nothing. It's just that Mary was going to send for that Yeshua of Nazareth and ask him to heal Lazarus. She sent for him 3 days ago." "Well, perhaps he was busy," her mother replied. "I suppose. I guess the little family from Bethany is not as important as the big crowds that he teaches." Mother stared at her daughter, her head tilted to one side. "Why are you taking it so hard? I thought you disliked Mary and her family." The girl shrugged. "I do, I guess. I don't like having people like her in our village." Mother studied her for a minute. "You know, Mary has changed. She doesn't do that anymore. It seems that after she met Yeshua, she left all of that behind her. Since then, she's been living a respectable life in her family home. Why is that a problem to you?" "Well, we all know what she is." Her mother sighed. "Sometimes people do things like that because they've been badly hurt when they were younger.
We would probably be better off if we were to treat such people with kindness. You never know when you might need someone to be kind to you. And, she said, perhaps but for someone else's kindness, some of the people you love could be in the same position as Mary.
Nobody in my family. I would just die of shame.
I see,
Mother said, then turned and walked away. Now what's the matter with her? Sarah wondered out loud. I shook my head. This young one had a lot to learn. I just wish she could do it without hurting other people so much. It had been 3 days since the funeral. Sarah had not seen Mary at the well again. When she returned to the house with water, Mother was stacking extra bread on a plate in a basket and pulling her shawl around her shoulders.
Come with me, Sarah. We're going to visit Mary and Martha.
I just got back with the water, the girl protested. I have some chores to do. Mother stopped and gave her a long look, then commanded,
Come with me.
Obediently, Sarah turned and followed her mother.
Bring that jar,
Mother said.
We'll get them some extra water at the well, too. They'll probably be needing it.
Then they walked in silence to the house. Sarah had not been inside their home before. She stepped into the courtyard and looked around. It was neat and clean and reminded her of her own home. Martha came out to meet them.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for bacon. I just haven't had the time or the energy these past few days. I know, Mother said. That's why we brought some. And Sarah has drawn some water for you.
The girl set the jug down beside the kitchen area, and Martha laid a clean linen cloth over the mouth of it to keep stray flies from drowning.
How is Mary?
Mother asked.
She has spent most of the time asleep the past few days, because she and Lazarus were always very close. She's taken it extra hard. Have you heard anything from Yeshua of Nazareth?
Martha shook her head.
No, but I wish he would come back soon. It will be comforting to Mary. She needs to get up and start doing some normal things that will help her get through this.
Mother nodded.
Sarah and I will assist you with the chores that Mary would usually do. Sometimes rest is the best thing for a broken heart, at least for a few days. Here, Sarah, Mother directed. Take the broom and sweep the courtyard. Everything should be neat and clean when Yeshua and his friends return.
Silently, Sarah took the broom and headed for a corner of the courtyard. It almost sounded as if Mother was looking forward to Yeshua's return as much as Mary. After the girl finished sweeping the courtyard, she found Mother hugging Martha.
Oh, thank you,
the woman said, stepping away from Mother.
If I can walk for a while, maybe I'll feel better. Take as long as you want, Mother responded. Sarah and I will stay here in case Mary needs anything.
Thank you, Martha repeated, heading for the doorway. It startled Sarah a little later when Martha burst into the courtyard and walked hurriedly through the house toward Mary's sleeping quarters. Did you have a good walk? The girl asked politely. Martha nodded as she brushed past her. Seconds later, Mary emerged from the sleeping chamber she and Martha shared, her hair disheveled and her eyes red and puffy. She pulled her outer garment on, fastening the tie at the waist as she went. Where are you going? Sarah asked. Neither of them answered her, so she followed them. Mother also went with them. Maybe they're going back to the grave to weep some more, Sarah suggested to her mother. We could go wail with them.
Maybe,
Mother muttered, hurrying to catch up. Sarah shrugged and kept walking. Wherever they were heading, it would be better than sitting around the house looking for chores to do. As they reached the edge of town, Sarah saw a group of travelers. Mary broke into a run.
Yeshua! She shouted. Yeshua!
She ran and threw herself at his feet, sobbing. Martha started crying too. To Sarah's amazement, Yeshua's own eyes filled with tears.
Where have you buried him?
He asked. The women led him to the family tomb.
In there,
they said. By now, tears poured down Yeshua's face. Sarah couldn't believe it. He was crying with them. Then, to her great surprise, he commanded,
Roll the stone back.
Sarah shuddered.
But, Master, Martha protested, he's been dead for 4 days now, and he will stink terribly. You really don't want to do this.
Yes, I do, he continued. Roll the stone away.
The men who were with him tugged at the stone blocking the tomb entrance. What was Yeshua going to do? Sarah had heard that he could do miracles and heal blind people. Rumors even claimed that he had brought a dead boy back to life. But surely no one actually believed that. Yeshua glanced toward heaven and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. You always hear me. But today my friends who are with me will see it too, and believe that you sent me." Sarah felt as if her hair were standing on end. Was he really talking to God that way, as though he was a family member? Suddenly Yeshua shouted, "Lazarus, come out of there!" Everyone stared as they heard a shuffling noise in the cave. Then Lazarus, still wrapped from head to toe in the grave clothes they had wound around him, came shuffling toward the tomb entrance.
"Well," Yeshua said, "untangle him. Let him loose."
Instantly they rushed forward. After they unwound Lazarus, someone flung a cloak around him. Everyone was laughing and shouting and talking all at once. Sarah just stood and shivered. Could it be? Could he actually have raised Lazarus from the dead? Obviously he had. Could he really be the Messiah? If he was not, he would be a powerful enemy. She glanced around. Many others in the crowd that had gathered also stood there silently. She wondered if they too had trouble believing in this teacher from Nazareth. When she searched for Yeshua again, he had disappeared. While spirits don't weep the way humans do, my eyes would have filled with tears if they could have. What more could Yeshua do that would startle these people out of their doubt? What else could he do to prove he was the Son of God? I shook my head. Nothing. The Creator had made these creatures with the power of choice. They could believe him or not, and unless he took away that power to choose, there was nothing he or I could do about it. A great sadness filled me as I stood watching the celebrating crowd, for my young charge was not one of them. David, Leper Colony. Recording David's life and his choices have been painful. Terrible things had happened to him, but instead of drawing him closer to the Comforter of Israel, each tragedy made him harder and more bitter. Losing his beautiful young wife in childbirth seemed to be the last straw that any man could bear, and then to be diagnosed as a leper on top of it was crushing. I had watched him leave the temple on that fateful day, carrying his toddler, who, though glowing with health, would soon be rotting, like all the other lepers if taken to the colony. Unfortunately, David had no other choice. Now I quivered with excitement, knowing the surprise that waited for him. The closer he came to the leper colony outside the city, the more depressed he became, and the slower his footsteps. The little one he carried was sound asleep, his curly auburn hair like his father's. The leper colony was a polite word for the garbage dump, where the lepers had found some caves to live in. They were able to paw through the garbage and sometimes find food, though the lucky ones had family bring food and leave it for them. As David approached, the other lepers left their caves and stared at him and his child.
"Why did you bring a child here?"
asked an older man with a huge oozing sore where his nose used to be. David tried not to stare at him.
"I had no choice. You think I'd bring my son into a place like this on purpose?"
"You're a leper?"
Nodding, David pulled back the neckline of his robe and rolled up his sleeve to show them the white scaly patches.
"Yeah, but the boy is not."
"He soon will be,"
grunted an old man. Another man stepped forward, though his head was covered with a ragged brown hood, and David couldn't see his face clearly.
"Come,"
he said.
"we have room in my cave."
The cave smelled bad, yet David was thankful for the hospitality.
"Your name?"
asked the hooded man. "David."
"Oh, you remind me so of someone I once knew. What town are you from?"
"I was born in Bethlehem," David answered, "but I haven't lived there for years."
"Why?"
Staring at the wall beyond the man's head, David replied,
"I don't really want to talk about it."
The old man grunted.
"Who was your mother?"
The younger leper faced him. "And for an outcast, you ask a lot of questions."
"I've been gone a long time,"
the old man said slowly.
"I hunger for news of home. I too was from Bethlehem."
The younger man's forehead wrinkled in puzzlement.
"If you were from Bethlehem, what are you doing with these lepers? Why aren't you with those outside Bethlehem?"
"Oh, now you ask a lot of questions. Do you remember the name of your mother?"
David stared. "Why are you asking me this? Who are you?" The old man drew his hood back so David could see him. His first response was to recoil in disgust. The man's face had been so eaten away by the disease that he no longer looked human. But that hair, curly red hair, was just like his. "Who are you?" David demanded. The disfigured leper now wept openly. "My son," he said. "My son, you grew up into a handsome man. How could you have this disease too? What horrible trick fate has played on us." "Yeah," David spat. "Fate or God. Why'd you leave us? You did leave us." The old man nodded. "Your mother begged me not to leave, but as a leper in Bethlehem I would have been chased out of the town once people found out, and with her as a widow, my property would have reverted to my family, and your mother to my brother. If I just disappeared, it allowed some time. Your mother was not disgraced by a divorce, and everyone would wait, for a time at least, in case I came back. It was the best thing I could do for my family. I was desperate." Filled with rage, David stood and punched the cave wall with his free arm. His little son woke up and started to cry. "It's okay. It's okay," David soothed him. "Father's not angry at you." He glanced up at the disfigured leper. "I guess I'm not even angry at you. I never knew." "I know," the old man choked out, "but what could I have told you?" "Well, now there are 3 generations of us here rotting in this stinking pit. The God of Israel must really hate sons of Bethlehem with red hair." His father nodded as his grandson looked up at him with wide eyes. I shook my head. David had finally found his father, and yet he still cursed the Most High. Surely this human was bitter to the core. Was there anything redeemable in him at all, I wondered? It had only been a few weeks, yet already David and his little one looked as filthy and tattered as the rest of the leprous beggars. Every day he checked the toddler for white patches on his dirty little body. But so far all he noted was that both he and the child were rapidly losing weight. "Son, there's a crowd coming along the road here," his father called. "Come out of the cave." "Why, I'm busy." "Yeah, staring off into the darkness. Quit feeling sorry for yourself. It's Yeshua of Nazareth. We've heard wonderful things about him." "Yeah, I bet you have. I've heard more than I want to hear about him." "Oh, come on. I hear he can heal leprosy." David rolled his eyes. "And why would he want to do that, even if he could? Face it, the God of Israel hates us, and if this Yeshua really is the Messiah, he'll probably hate us too." The old man glared at him. "What do you have to lose? You've already lost everything else. Are you afraid of giving up this stinking cave? Are you afraid of losing life as a leper? Because you're looking forward someday to having a face like mine? And a fate like mine?" David stared at his father's feet, and noticed for the first time that many toes were missing. "No wonder he limps," he thought. "May you and your pride rot right here in Gehenna," his father shouted. "But I am going to see this Yeshua. What do I have to lose? If all else fails, I'll be back. But if he is the Messiah, I won't be. I've prayed for you all these years, and I love you, my son, but not enough to stay here." Just then little Jonathan, David's son, ran into the cave and grabbed his father's hand. "Come on, father," he begged. "Let's go with grandfather. Come on." David got to his feet, and between his father and his little red-headed son headed for the road, squinting at the brightness of the sunlight. As they neared the edge of the crowd, the lepers automatically began shouting, "Unclean! Unclean!" Little Jonathan laughed at the crowd's reaction. It's like the parting of the Red Sea, Father. Look at those people. Get out of the way. His grandfather would have laughed if he hadn't been so ashamed. But instead he called,
Yeshua, son of David, the first David, have mercy on us.
Yes, the little child echoed, have mercy on us. Suddenly the last of the people moved to the side, and they stood before Yeshua of Nazareth. David felt as if his piercing eyes could see right into his soul. He returned the gaze for a few moments, and then whispered, Have mercy on me too, Yeshua of Nazareth, and dropped to his knees. Would he heal them? Would he bless them? Or would he just send them away? Go, Yeshua said in a loud voice. David's heart sank until he heard the rest of the instruction. Go show yourselves to the priests. David looked down at his body, pulling his sleeve up. He peeked inside his tattered robe. The white patches were gone. He turned to his father. The open, draining sores that had once been the beggar's face had vanished. Instead, he was an impressive-looking man, the father David dimly remembered from his childhood. Scooping little Jonathan up with one arm, he hugged his father with the other. Look at us! He shouted. Look at us! They turned to the other lepers. The 10 of them danced in a circle. Look at us! We're whole! Let's go to the temple and show that priest a thing or two. He'll have to declare us clean now. Grandfather scooped up little Jonathan and started to run with the rest of the lepers back toward the city. David followed for several yards, then stopped. Come on, shouted his father. I'll catch up with you. David then turned and walked slowly back through the crowd. Falling on his knees before Yeshua, he burst into tears. Thank you, he said. Thank you. Yeshua of Nazareth looked at the healed man. There were 10, he commented. Slowly, David bowed his head in acknowledgement. Gratitude doesn't always come easily for those of us who've had hard times, he said haltingly. Yeshua nodded. You've healed me, and you've healed my life. I have a father and a son. I have a life worth living. The teacher smiled. Go, show yourself to the priest. You're not officially healed till you do that. It was the law. The priests are important, David said, but even more important is my Messiah.
This broadcast has come from the book Victory of the Warrior King by Sally Pierson Dillon, with permission from the Review and Herald Publishing Association. This book and the rest of the series, War of the Ages, can be purchased by going to www.adventistbookcenter.com or by calling 1-800-765-6955. I'm your narrator, Austin Backus, and this audio project is a gift to you from my free Christian book ministry, RXF 1888. Please visit our website, www.rxf1888.com, to request free Christian books for both kids and adults. And join us here again for more stories from Mark the Recording Angel.